Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NextDev. Today we have a very special guest from Theo's team. We have Ben Davis. How you doing, Ben?
Good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So, you are Theo's content manager and a software engineer.
Yes.
So tell us about that. How'd you get started with software engineering to begin off, and then Theo's content manager? How'd that come along? So
Yeah.
give us the life
So
story.
I'll give you the abridged version because it's about 6 years in the making. But I started doing programming and computer science stuff in high school. The high school I went to had a program with another high school in the area, which was like a college. I forget I think they call it like career tech or something like that. But effectively, really, what it was I could take college level computer science classes in high school. So was first exposed to programming and stuff like that in high school. We started, my very first language was Visual Basic. I did a lot of stuff in that, ended up actually competing in high school in that. I made it to like the national championship in that like competition league or whatever my senior year, but that was also COVID year, which got nuked, so I didn't get to do that, which really sucked. But that's sort of how I got started. But the big thing that really happened there was we had to do a web development project for kind of our end of year thing. The stack we ended up using back then was like PHP and jQuery and stuff like that. It was kind of a mess, but it allowed me to work with some real businesses and make some real websites and realize like, hey, I can make money off this, do more things with this. So I kept going with it through college. I went to Ohio State, did the computer science major there, had a very good experience with that. Have not fully finished the degree. I just moved to San Francisco, so I'm most likely not going to end up finishing that degree. But throughout college, I ended up building a lot of stuff. The biggest of which was Insider Viz. Is that pulled up right now?
I can pull it up right here. Here we
Yeah,
go.
cool. Just pull that up. Basically, what this was just insider trading data, visualizations, and analysis. My friends and I built this our sophomore and junior year. We ended up competing in some entrepreneurship competitions at Ohio State. We ended up winning all of those, got some money, which allowed us to work on it more. And yeah, it was a great experience. And then my junior year, I started watching Theo's content. His content is actually what sort of inspired me to it's what inspired the tech stack that ended up becoming Insider Viz. It was the OG T3 stack, the TRPC, Next.js, Prisma, all that stuff. It was the very first stack we used to get it in production. And I really liked his videos and I wanted to make videos of my own. So I started making videos my junior year of college. They weren't particularly good, but they were there. And I just kind of kept grinding and grinding on that for about a year and a half or so until last summer, Theo basically put something out where he's like, hey, I want a channel apprentice to mentor someone on YouTube and help out with some little things here and there. Immediately jumped on that, DM'd him, sent him some stuff, and he was like, yeah, sure. You look good. You can do this. He brought me in to do that. And then slowly over the last 6 to 8 months or so, it's just ramped up. It went from just me helping out with thumbnails, which were atrocious, really, really bad to start out, doing thumbnails, then it was placing ads on videos, then it was editing ads, and it's just got more and more and more to the point where now I am his full-time channel manager. I do a lot of email, a lot of video editing, also a lot of code writing because we have a lot of internal tools that we use to run this YouTube channel. Running a YouTube channel at the size and scale of Theo's is a lot of work. And it just got to the point where I was just doing so much that it made sense for me to move out here full time. And my job now is basically to just hang out in Theo's living room all day and we just work on stuff, be it email, video editing, code, whatever it really is. It's a very, very good gig. And that's kind of how I got here.
Nice. Yeah, that's super cool. And I went ahead and when you're talking about your YouTube, I showed that.
Mhm.
And so obviously, you're not doing bad on the YouTube side. 22,000 subscribers, 171 videos. Definitely a little Theo Junior over here. But
That, yeah.
yeah, that's funny. So let's. I just want to jump into Insider Viz first of all.
Mhm.
So let me pull it up right here. So insider trading insights.
Mhm.
This might just be me, but on face value, that sounds illegal. But yeah. What's why did you start Insider Viz? Why didn't you start like like a GPT-1 LLM wrapper type thing? What inspired you to start this?
Because one of my friends was doing some stock market stuff and he wanted this data. SEC data, all of the data that you see on Insider Viz, like if you go to our company screener and you click on a company or something and you see a full list of their insider trades, all that data is already public. Whenever a company, an insider, quote unquote, in a company, and that it's a pretty wide definition, be it from a CEO, a board member, or any 10% share owner, has to publicly report any trades they make to the SEC, and those are cataloged as Form 4s from their website. But the SEC website and their systems for displaying out and filtering through all that is god awful. So we ended up building a much better solution for viewing and working with this data. And that's basically what you see here. You have like this nice graph to see, okay, when are they trading? How much are they trading? You have a full list of everything in there. It very much started off just as like a, hey, we kind of want this, so let's make it type thing, which is oftentimes the best way to build something like this. And this project has admittedly kind of gone into maintenance mode lately. A lot of the reason for that is just because we've all kind of gotten to the point where we just realized we're not finance guys. I'm much more of a tech guy, and to take Insider Viz and what we're doing there to the next level, it basically just means we need to tackle annual and quarterly reports. We need to pull AI insights out of those. We need to figure out good ways to visualize those, put those in a newsletter, put it behind a subscription, and grow that up. But I and the guys I was working with just don't really want to do that, admittedly. So we've kind of moved on, but it was a very good project. We made a decent amount of money out. Well, not a decent, but like for a little SaaS type thing for college kids who have no idea what the hell they're doing, it did pretty well. I think we ended up in total having about like 50 or 60 paying customers, made I think like $2,000 or $3,000 off of it. It's not a horrible thing, and I'm very happy with the actual product and tech we used to build this.
Nice. Yeah. No, those numbers aren't bad at all. And you said that was that junior year of college?
Started junior year of
Started
college,
junior year of college.
got a lot better what would have been my senior year, but I was working at an app agency instead of taking classes because I got kind of bored with classes and wanted to make some money. But yeah, it's been quite a project.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot because that's where I'm at right now. I'm currently a second semester junior right now, and it's really hard because all of my classes are online,
Mm-hmm.
Zoom, non-attendance required. So I'm like, I
Yeah,
could go, or I could just keep pushing and make like $400, just
real.
like in the same amount of time. But anyways, no, yeah, I definitely agree with the maintenance mode because there's a lot of stuff going on. You're just
Yeah,
the page.
it was a very heavy project. There's a lot more to this than you just see on the website. The website itself is a SvelteKit app. We use D3 for all the visualizations. They are all custom built. So like that graph right there, we custom wrote that whole thing to get the bubbles on there and the hovers and all that stuff. That was a ton of work. And then the back end is right now we're just serving all the data from a SvelteKit API just within the app itself. But the way we're actually getting that data is a pretty complex crawler because the SEC has so many weird constraints you have to work with to actually get the data. Very, very, very heavy rate limits, very annoying and obnoxious to work with APIs. It was not an easy problem to solve at all.
I was going to say working with D3 is a rather complicated process, and rolling your own charts, quite a bold decision, I have to say. Did
Yeah,
you decide that that's the only way? Like, there's nothing out there that can support your use case?
for us, one of our core value props was our charts. Like just the fact that you can go to Tesla's stock graph and you can just see all the insider trades on there. That's our value prop. Like that's what's unique and cool about Insider Viz. And in order to make that really good, you have to custom build it. Like I would not recommend using D3 to custom build your internal analytics tools. That makes no sense. If you just need to see a basic line graph, just use one of the bajillions of chart libraries out there. Who the hell cares? But when your entire company's value prop is your visualizations, they need to be beyond the level you can get from an out of the box library, which means you have to make them custom, which means you use the best solution that exists, which is D3.
That makes sense. I had a very complicated experience making it work nicely with our TypeScript code base. I'm curious if you had any trouble there.
Um, Getting types to work on D3 is admittedly kind of annoying. I will not lie. There are a lot of just like any's and many STFU TypeScript comments within the project. We very much ejected out of it a lot of the time just to make it work. If we were going to keep maintaining it, we would definitely clean it up and make the types a lot better. But for what it ended up being, D3, I think, gets a reputation for being really, really complex, and to me, it's one of those things where it just has a really high bar of entry. Once you get what's going on, and once you get the manipulation of DOM nodes and creating these different paths and how it all works, because they are just SVGs under the hood, it's very manageable and doable. It's just that for a lot of technologies like React, you can get going and useful in React within like an hour or so if you're already a developer and you already have some experience with the web. It's not particularly complex. And especially if you've done another technology, like Svelte's a good example. If you're a competent React developer, picking up Svelte or Vue will take you a matter of 1 or 2 hours at most. It's not that hard to get proficient with it. With D3, there's a much higher ceiling, there's a much higher floor that you need to hit before you can even be productive with it. And I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it.
Just looking at the
Yeah.
docs, it kind of seems like it's a similar learning curve from going from like standard simple jQuery like 3D visualizations to going to like 3.js. Like just on the docs alone, I went ahead and put up the docs. Just the amount of sidebar tabs that then expand into more tabs. It's it looks like a challenge. So that's really cool that you are able to implement those custom. And they haven't broke yet, too, that I know of.
No, that's one of the things that's kind of a miracle for Insider Viz. We haven't pushed any new code to that site in months, and it's still running. New data is in there. The latest SEC trades are in there. It's still just kind of chugging along, which is a miracle, or maybe we're secretly competent. I'm not really sure, but it does seem to work pretty well. I'm very happy with how it turned out.
Just don't touch it. That's
real.
Just don't touch it.
That's where we are. We were talking. Depending on what happens this year and what we end up doing, if we might end up just like open sourcing the whole thing and doing some stuff there, there's a lot of cool content I could make on Insider Viz and the stuff we built there. I think there are a lot of cool stories to tell in that. So that might happen at some point, but for right now, it's fine how it is, and I don't want to touch it. It's not a priority.
Right. No, yeah. I feel like, honestly, the best, not exit strategy, but I feel like the best way that it could kind of end is like someone, like a small financial company were to buy it out and sort of adopt it. I feel like that'd be the best sort of course of action. But
that would be fantastic.
Yeah, we could dream. Well, if hypothetically, if you could, would you want them to just completely acquire it and buy it off of you so you wouldn't have to manage it, or would you want like a part still in it?
No, I mean, that's where we are now. Like, it's very much, I would love to just, if there's someone who wanted to take it and run with it, I think that there's a core there that is worth running with. We're just not the ones to do it. And if there's someone who wanted to do that, that would be awesome. The long-term dream on this when we were still working on it was very much like, okay, we either get folded and acquired into like a Bloomberg, or we just, the long-term like crazy VC play on that is replacing Bloomberg. Those are kind of the two options. But, obviously that didn't end up happening, and that's totally fine. But yeah, just a nice little small acquisition would be nice there, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. So, let's go ahead and move on. So, after Insider Viz, Theo, how did that, so when you like applied, I guess, I don't know the correct terminology, but when you like reached out to him, did you like send him like a 30-second clip where you're like, "What's up, Theo? My name's Ben, and these are the 5 top 10 reasons I want to become your content manager"? Or like, what did that look like?
It was actually way easier than that because he already knew who I was. He'd already watched my videos, already knew who I was, liked what I was doing, so it was much easier. It was very much just like he put out that tweet for a apprentice. I immediately DM'd and he was like, "Yeah, for sure, you're the right fit." Easy, very easy slide in right there. And then a lot of like becoming the channel manager was just growing my responsibilities organically over time. Like I said, it started with just thumbnails, then it was ads, then it was the Vercel thing happened and he switched from the channel sponsor model to the per video ad model, which has been a godsend for me because that's the reason I get to be out here, is because the amount of work on the channel quintupled, or probably 10x whenever that happened. Because before it was just like 6 to 10 brands to work with, do a tutorial, do some sponsored videos, nothing too crazy. Now it's daily videos with an ad on every single video is a lot of work. Working with 30 plus brands, it's quite an experience to get all that to work.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned this when we were talking offline one time, but it's like the ads are constantly being checked and like re-verified and stuff like that, right? So I can imagine the workload on that is way bigger than any sort of other. Hey, do you want an ad? Yeah, sure. Let me do this one video for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of back and forth on it because we'll record like one of our current channel sponsors, like Blacksmith. We worked with them recently. Great company, great guys. Really, really like working with them. And we recorded 3 ads for them. So I edit those 3 ads, and then we need to send it out to them for a review. And then they bring it back to us, and they're like, "Hey, these look great, but can we change these like 2 things?" So I have to re-edit those, send them back to them. And then we have to figure out where those get placed, how all that works. We have to get the tracking links set up. There's so much coordination just to make this work on a daily cadence.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, Goose.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we moved in together recently, like a week ago,
Yeah.
or about so,
Yeah,
and I've gotten to see your routine, sort of. Working with Theo, you disappear for like 10 hours.
Yeah, pretty much my work hours are like 2 p.m. to 2 a.m. every day. It kind of feels like pretty much my day to day is just wake up, go to the gym, clean some stuff up, and then get some food, walk over to Theo's, and then just work all day. That's pretty much it. Like, and again, it's very much just like kind of hanging out in his living room and doing whatever needs to be done. It's a really cool gig. It's working with someone like Theo is awesome because he does pretty much exactly what I want to do long term. So he's an incredible mentor and he's a great friend. I really, really like working with him.
Yeah, sounds like an amazing gig.
Yeah.
I heard also that you got to contribute a whole lot to the thumbnails on the channel. I understand you're making all of them nowadays. Is that right?
Not all, but I'd say a majority at this point. It that was one of the things where it went from like I would make maybe 1 in 20 to now I'm probably making like 7 in 10. Like it's gotten way more. Just because I've naturally gotten better at it over time, which is what happens on anything. I mean, if anything in the content world or in programming, or just anything in life, it's just you need to put in the reps. And that's one of the best things of getting to work for Theo, who's such a machine on generating content. I can get so many reps in so fast. I haven't looked at it recently, but I think my thumbnails directory on my laptop, I've got approximately like 150 to 200 thumbnails in there.
Oh, I thought you were about to say gig. I was like, dang.
No, not gigs, no, because I mean the files aren't huge. But yeah, I've made an insane amount of thumbnails and done an insane amount of video editing, and you just kind of get good at this stuff over time. That's just how it works. It's the classic thing. I think Mr. Beast said this about YouTube, that like any small creator, someone who wants to get into this stuff and wants advice, what he and most any competent creator will say is like, okay, great, make 100 videos, then come back to me. And typically after making 100 videos or doing the thing 100 times, they'll already have a very good idea of how to do it and be at a bar where like you can actually be useful.
Right.
Actually improve there on the advice. But when you're just starting out, you're just figuring out how to press record on your camera, bring the footage in to Final Cut, get it edited and clipped down. You just got to go through that yourself. And Theo has let me do that on thumbnails and editing and on the channel organically by doing it for him, since he already has so much surface area to work with. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and I understand a lot of work needs to go into piece of media content in order to make it a YouTube banger.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, I'm sure, are running into this, starting this thing, that like there's a lot that goes into this. I'm very impressed with how much like production quality and nice setup you guys already have on episode 2, which is great. I'm looking forward to seeing all the YouTube clips and figuring out how to really blow this up.
So that's probably, it's my backstory with that type of thing is really funny because I have always gone for, when I ship something or when I create something, it better look damn good that I would watch it. That's kind of like my threshold where I'm like, if I don't even want to watch this, I don't even want to ship it, because my standard for success is myself, and that's why I was tweeting about this the other day. I was like, the amount of projects I have that have never seen the light of day just because they worked really well, but I wasn't able to slap a good UX and UI onto it is crazy, because I'll use it, I encounter one small bug, I just completely drop it because I'm like, this is worthless, this is useless, I can't even use this. But I think my not streaming, but like some sort of content creation type thing began back in like the 2015s when like the Clash of Clans streamers were like really big. So I was I remember I was talking to my dad. I was like, hey, can I rent this iPad from you for like $10 a month so I can make Clash of Clans like builder progression videos? And he was like, sure. So I rented it to him for like $10 a month. Obviously, nowhere near what it actually costs. And I just started like uploading those videos over and over again. And I got a solid 200 views on combined five videos. But that just kind of like shot my passion of creation and making good visuals and making good experiences. So that it's like, okay, I could actually enjoy this. I could actually tune into my own show and kind of relive those moments. Or if I didn't create it, then I could kind of tune in and find some value from it. That's sort of my ideology behind it.
That's the bar that Theo always talks about, is make videos that you would watch, make the videos that you want to exist. And that sounds very trite and very obvious, like, oh yeah, obviously just do that. But I found, at least in my experience, when you're just starting out, that's a very hard thing to internalize and actually understand whether or not something you're making is something that you would really consume. There's a difference I found between knowing something and really internalizing and feeling and getting it. And that's one of the things that I think I've struggled the longest with, is trying to make that work to where the videos I make are the videos that I want to watch, where the thumbnails I make are the thumbnails that I would click on. And it's something that you just need to put in reps in order to get to.
Right.
I think that perfectionism thing you talked about just a second ago, that's something I've kind of gone back and forth on too. And I think that's a very difficult balance to strike, where it's like, you want it to be perfect, but also if it's always going to be perfect, it can get to a point of almost just, it gets stuck in development hell and it never comes out and it never sees the light of day because it never hits that bar. And figuring out where that bar really is and how soon you should actually ship it, very, very hard to do. I don't have an answer on it, but it's definitely something I'm working on, that's for sure.
One thing
The answer
Go ahead.
Depends. The answer is it depends, right? I think in general, this philosophy of building products for yourself works great in great many areas in life. It doesn't just have to be videos, right? In product design, this is an amazing ideology to work with. And in general, in my experience, the best web apps that I would create would be the web apps that I would use. I would understand the pain points a user would experience. So there would be a shorter feedback loop to understand what needs to be improved.
Yeah, 100%. It's a delicate balance.
I think it was Lee Robin. I'm pulling up the tweet here. Yeah, it was Lee Robinson who said that this is like the era of like personal software, especially with AI, and I think that couldn't be truer, because the amount of, I find myself every day, if I have some data source or if I have some information and I'm like, I could automate this. I have a home built sort of dashboard that's customizable. Sort of think of like a retool type dashboard, and I go into Cursor and I say, hey, make this data source connect with this dashboard, so that way I can provide some sort of actionable insights. And I think Lee hit it spot on, where it's like, it's just for you. It doesn't have to look amazing. It doesn't have to support 10 million users and have pay plans and stuff like that. It just works.
Yeah, I mean, building those things that solve a very specific problem to you is something Theo does a very good job of. easiest example of this is the PicThing project, which I just recently shipped some code on, where we're making an insane amount of thumbnails, and in all of Theo's thumbnails, he has his face. It's .gg, but he has his face in all of the thumbnails. So I think it's
Yeah,
pic.ping.gg.
there we go.
There it is. But like his face is in every single thumbnail. So we need a good way to manage and organize these. So we built this nice little system where we can go in there. We have this giant dashboard, a huge list of Theo faces that I can just scroll through, find the one that fits the right vibe for the video, hit copy, and then just paste it into Affinity Photo, and then I can just make the thumbnail from there. It automatically removes the background, and like all those thumbnails you see right there, a lot of those are ones that I made, and I use this tool to make them. Solving those specific problems is very useful, and if you make them good, something I've also realized is that oftentimes we are not as unique as we often think we are, and things that we need and things that help us will often help at least decent number of other people. There are things that are more niche than others, obviously, but there's a lot of opportunity and open ground here to make these nice personal tools.
Yeah, I agree, and I can personally say the website redesign looks very good, and yeah, I think that's just it. It's something that's helpful for you, as much as we like to think we are, and something I've had to come to terms with very often. We're not that special. We're pretty special. I mean, everyone's special in their own ways, but we're not that special. And if something works really well for you, it's probably going to work really, really well for someone else as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I haven't tried PicThing yet, but based off the videos and stuff like that I saw, it's funny. I haven't tried PicThing because I have my own process for when I need backgrounds removed and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that problem was solved. And I know people who don't have the infrastructure and stuff like that to sort of run and create those jobs would benefit from PicThing greatly, because it's so easy. You drag, you drop, it gets downloaded. Boom.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
Yep, that's exactly it. And the big thing too there is like the background removal, because like, I mean, like you said, you have a workflow for that, so great, use that. But most content creators and stuff don't have a nice system for that, and it's an annoying problem. Many times I've gone through and manually removed backgrounds in Affinity. It sucks. I hate doing it. So automating that out is great. Taking your workflow and the things you're making, hyper optimizing them, taking the little rough edges and creating smaller tools for those. It's a great system. It works really, really well.
Right. That is awesome. And obviously the newest launch of Theo. Have you had any involvement with T3? T3 chat, that is.
I have not written any code for T3 chat, but I've been around Mark and Theo while they're working on it, and they are pretty much constantly working on that. Basically every single time I'm over there in the last like 2 weeks, they're just sitting there constantly grinding out T3 chat stuff, constantly iterating on that, because they've hit something really cool here, and it's working, it's growing, it's doing very well, and they have a real shot at winning here. So it's pretty cool to see something like that catching on so much.
Yeah, and it looks very inspiring how motivated Theo is on shipping the thing. And I also believe I saw the tweet the other day from him saying that he shipped more code in 2025 already February, than he did in 2024, which is impressive.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of that too is just like having the clear and present need of like, okay, I need to build this thing, and a very good thing to work on is really, really helpful. That's something I've struggled with, is figuring out like, okay, I have this time and I have these skills and I want to do these things, but what the heck do I actually build and make is a tricky thing. And often the solution is the more you build and the more you make, the more things you realize you need to make. And it's just kind of this snowball effect that you just end up making a bajillion things, and you have this huge portfolio of stuff and it all works and you're busy. But getting that snowball rolling is very difficult. The very early stages is tough. That I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. That like, I think YouTube is a good example of this. That like that small YouTuber pit, or even in like a SaaS where you're making like a little bit of money off of it, is a very rough place to be. You have a little bit of success, but not the success you want. Figuring out how to get to that next level and keep making stuff is It's very tricky.
Yeah, it's not the success for freedom, but it's the success for like where you can't be like, oh, it's not making any money at all. This is just a failure. So
Yeah,
it's like that middle ground for sure.
yeah, it's a tricky place to be.
Yeah, pulled up on the screen share. The T3 chat is nearing 1% of Claude's traffic, which
Mhm.
is that's wow. That's because it's only been about 25 days I think the official
Yeah,
release was,
not even, yeah.
and yeah, 1% is shocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's a combination of things. It's just a very good product. They did a very good job of making the best possible experience for this stuff. It's, timing partially because, they timed it with like two big model drops, the DeepSeek moment and the Gemini stuff, both lined up super well here to create big moments for T3 chat and just constantly shipping and iterating and pushing hard on it. It's working and it's really cool to see. I definitely think that they do have a shot on that.
I definitely think this is the best way for him to take advantage of like the AI hype, because a lot of people, when they want to take advantage of the AI hype, they kind of just post and create some ChatGPT wrapper, and it's like, okay, it's kind of good. But I think this was the correct way to do it, where you don't AI saturate your product, but you take advantage of the full force of AI. Because yeah, I mean, like, let me pull it up, but it looks amazing when you go on the site. It's fast. I mean, that's the primary thing, but like when you go and ignore my other prompts, I was doing benchmarking for it. But like yeah, all the oh my gosh, he's added so many more. But all the
Yep.
experimental models, the premium models, these little
Hmm.
helpful, friendly icons, the statuses of each one, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's really well done, and yeah,
Yeah, I think figuring out how to use the AI stuff in a compelling way is tricky. If you asked anyone before they saw like if you went back 2 months, and Theo's even talked about this, like if you go back 2 months and ask anyone if T3 chat was a good idea, everyone would say no. Because on paper, it makes zero sense for that to be any good, but just a variety of things lined up and it did end up working really well because it was something that he very directly wanted and they executed very well. They hit the moments really well, the timing was great, and it's good. But I think as far as like building more AI stuff and how to actually use this stuff effectively, there is so much, and I see so much of this stuff. There are so many like tools for building with AI, so many different companies that are like connecting all your different data sources, tools for generating web apps, tools for doing all this stuff. The To use the gold rush analogy here, there are so many shovels being built that I think it's going to be very interesting to see like what the actual implementations of those shovels will be. There haven't been a huge I at least that I've seen, like Cursor's probably the best example of like a com a product that uses AI very heavily but isn't just like a AI plumbing company, if that makes any sense. Because a lot of the problems now are like, okay, how do we fit all these pieces together? I had a thing 2 months ago where we sent out some stuff to some sponsors. We sent it out to 20 different sponsors within our email, and then we needed to transfer all that data over to our Notion. That task, the AIs as they exist right now could absolutely do that task, but I still had to manually do it because the missing piece there is the plumbing. How do we get the data from Gmail into the AI into Notion in the right shape, in the right way? That kind of plumbing problem, which I guess would be like a GPT wrapper problem, that's what's up in the air. And that's kind of what's up for grabs. And that's something that I very much want to work on and figure out this year.
I think that's great because AI isn't stupid right now. It just doesn't have context. And the more context and the more personalized context an AI has, I've seen it benefit greater. Like, I'm working on a little, I'm doing a redesign of the Manager 3D site, and with that is sort of this unified chat experience where basically it says, what do you want to do? And it's not
Mm-hmm.
going to be a simple GPT-4 plugin. It's going to be able to have actions where you can drop a file into chat and it can take a look at that file visually and get a quote for it. And then if it needs to be something where it's too complex, then it can forward it to me on
Mm-hmm.
behalf of the chatbot and says, but the chatbot would say, let me ask my boss real quick, and it would text me. And it's that like integration that I think that's going to be the next step. where
Well,
it takes yeah.
Well, and getting all of that right is going to be very tricky because this is something that I tried out last year. I think it was like early last summer or something, right before the Theo stuff. I tried building out a like true generative I forget what they called it, but I used the Vercel stuff where you can basically add in more advanced tool calls. It was with their AI SDK. I built a weight tracker app in a chat interface. So you could go into the chat interface and say, like, hey, I just benched 225 for 5. I just did 225 times 5 times 5 a bench. You type that into the thing, it'll recognize what that is, pop up some UI that, like, okay, great, here's your set already loaded in here. And then you hit great, looks good, and then you save it to your thing. And I thought, like, oh, yeah, on paper, that should be really good. But it ended up actually not feeling that great. And a lot of the feedback I got on that was like people just kind of looking at this empty chat box and they're like, okay, but what can I actually do with this? What tools does it actually have? And it felt like this guessing game of like, okay, we just need to think like you're basically just bullying the AI into pulling out the tool calls when those tool calls could have just been a button.
Right.
So figuring out a way to almost the way I was thinking about it was like put the AI in the driver's seat. So instead of you having to come up with all the different things on what you want to put into that chat box to say, I did this, I did that, and then the AI figuring out what to give to you, because that puts a lot of the agency onto the person, which typically makes for a worse experience, especially when it's not deterministic like an AI. Rather, it could potentially be better to have an AI put more of the burden of thinking on the AI and allow and create a better user experience that way. I don't know exactly how it looks and how that would work. That's something I need to play with and figure out at some point. But it definitely feels like this whole just putting a chat on everything often doesn't feel that great. I often kind of just want a button and they just kind of work. Figuring out compelling use cases for the AI is definitely one of the trickiest things right now. Because like Cursor, the example from before, really compelling, really great use case, works super well. But like AI for weight tracking, it didn't end up actually feeling that great. So getting that balance will be tricky.
Yeah, I think. Remember the old days, or a while back, the Inkinator stuff, where it was you just press yes or no for basically every question, and it would kind of like guess like that celebrity
Oh yeah.
that you would do. I think, I mean, just thinking now, I was like, it'd be so much easier because the more choices you give an end user, obviously the more confused they're going to be. Because
Right.
if you drop a chat in front of them and say it's infinitely possible, they're not going to interact with it because they can't infinitely interact with it. But if you give yeah,
and that's not what you want.
but if you give them a button and you say, all right, do you want to do this or this? And then on the back end, have like a UI or something like that that's powered by those tool calls and takes initiatives.
Yeah.
I think that's the great way to do it, because a chat for the AI that we have right now, other than if you want to chat with it for like business applications, I don't think it's it. Yeah.
It's a tricky use case for sure. Definitely an unsolved problem for sure.
Right.
I have to say, going back to T3 chat, a lot of what I know about building products and shipping products really doesn't apply with this particular launch because, well, the only thing that it's got going for it is it works faster. I mean, strictly speaking, it has nice features built on top of it, multiple model selections, nice pricing on top of it. But the only thing that it did at launch was just being fast.
Price, speed, model selection, and distribution. Those are the advantages they have. It is for $8 a month, you get access to all of the really cool brand new models. They've done a really good job. I've seen Mark and Theo up until 3 a.m, making sure that the new model that just dropped, the Gemini, the DeepSeek, the whatever the hell, is on there immediately, and they can ride that wave. You combine that with their really good distribution, you combine that with a really great user experience, you combine that with a very affordable, very reasonable price, it becomes an incredibly compelling option for an end user. And I think that's a lot of what it is. It just has all these things going for it that make it work, even if they're a little more non-traditional, but that's just kind of how it often works. It's usually these things like this stuff just changes so fast all the time that like what works 2 months ago won't work 2 months from now. And like there can't be another T3 chat. Like trying to make a T3 chat competitor right now feels borderline suicidal. Like I would not bother with that. I don't think that's a good idea at all.
You would go broke.
There's just no point.
That price is physically unbeatable.
Yeah. 100%.
Right. One other thing, I want to talk a little bit more about your starting point, your career in this industry, right?
Mhm.
I understand you're a college dropout, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't know if I'm officially one yet. I haven't really filed any paperwork. I just kind of stopped signing up for classes.
Right.
But yes, I mean, at this point, pretty much I am, yeah, effectively.
There are a lot of success stories in Silicon Valley of people dropping out of colleges and pursuing their own thing.
Mhm.
Did you follow this being inspired by these examples, or it just made sense for you to do this to pursue the opportunity at hand?
I think there's a lot to this, but well, for one, there is absolutely this like romantic story of like the college dropout, go do the thing, screw the college, go do whatever. I feel that. Like I do. It did feel good to stop going to classes and work on more interesting stuff and do all that. Like I will not lie and pretend that that wasn't part of it. But I do think that very much as far as like, if there's like someone watching this who's in college and not sure whether or not they should drop out, I think the general answer there is I'm a college defender. I don't actually think it's useless. I think that I got a lot of very good and useful information and learning out of it. This core software program was really good. The algorithms were really good. The systems were really good. The math was really good. All of that is valuable, and just the general college experience. One of our friends, I won't name him here, but one of our friends is in college right now, and I know this guy very well, and I know for a fact that if he wanted to, he could drop out and go get a really nice job out here in Silicon Valley making 150 to 200K a year, no problem, at 19 years old. Wouldn't be an issue. But he's staying in college because he wants to enjoy college. He wants to have that experience. He wants to be with the people. And I think a lot of it for me was my freshman and sophomore year of college were the COVID years. My freshman year was 2020. So I did not have a freshman year. It was all online, stuck in like a tiny dorm room in a tower, not able to leave. It sucked. My sophomore year was basically the same thing. And by the time I got to my junior year, I'd already missed the like early parts of college where you make friends and you start doing stuff there, to the point where I'm like, this kind of sucks. All I'm getting out of this is the classes. And the classes are frankly kind of boring because like the web dev class was silly. I knew more about web dev than the class was teaching. I already had compelling stuff I wanted to work on. And I was just like, this isn't for me. I want to go do my own thing. I think it's very much just like, I wouldn't just blindly drop out. It was very much like, if you have something that's more compelling than college to do, hell yeah, go do that. But for just, if you're coming out of high school, don't really have any idea what you want to do, it's a lot better to be lost and confused in college than it is to be lost and confused flipping burgers at McDonald's. That is for sure.
Yeah, that's a very good analogy. And there's this thing when it comes to romanticizing college dropouts, making it big, survivorship bias, right? We're only taking a look at those who succeeded and not
Yeah.
those who did not. It's very natural. And it's important to realize that these people, they didn't become successful because they dropped out of college. They dropped out of college because they were capable of being successful without it. That's
Yeah,
it.
and they went on to do something more compelling than what they could have done in college. Like, it makes sense. Like, if you have a really cool opportunity, go take that opportunity. Hell yeah. Like, and again, you can always go back. Like, if I ever wanted to, I could go back. I don't think I will. I don't know what I would want to get out of it and want to do. Because I do think that I wanted to be like a PhD AI researcher type thing, then like, yeah, you really do need to just go through that battery of PhD courses and research and all that stuff. That makes total sense. But if you want to do web development and product development or even game development type stuff, you don't necessarily need it, but it's a good foundation for doing that kind of thing. It's still a good path.
Yeah, because I'm in college right now, and the biggest parts that I've found overall, college really hasn't been super helpful for me because I've been a very like creative person by myself. I've always been interested, and if there's something I want to do, I want to go out and do it. And
Yeah.
I've only found a couple classes to be helpful, but I've found a lot of my college classes are more so outdated than boring. Because
Oh,
I was taking a web dev class, and they were teaching. I mean, not that it's outdated, but they were teaching like PHP, jQuery, and
Yeah.
some of those like static server side applications as like
Yeah.
the frontier of the web. And I asked him about like Svelte and Next and Nuxt, and he was like, what a JavaScript framework? You
Yeah.
can't
Like, come
host a framework in JavaScript. That's not possible.
Yeah, exactly. That I fully agree with. I think that like for the super fresh, compelling stuff, you got to do it on your own. You're not going to get that in school. My web dev class was a Ruby on Rails class, and I won't pull punches here on this stuff. Like that's not like there's a reason these JavaScript frameworks exist. There's a reason like the web is better now than it was 10 years ago. I refuse to believe that the ceiling on what you can make with the newer tools is much higher than what you could on the older tools, and colleges will not teach you those tools because they're slower. They're slower to adapt. In order to change a curriculum, they have to go through a bureaucracy and a process. They have to get it approved by all the teachers. They have to get it all set up. They have to write the curriculum. They have to write the homeworks and the exams and the syllabus and all this stuff. And by the time all that gets written over the course of 3 years, Pages router has been deprecated and now we're using app router. Like, it's a losing game. You get foundations out of college. You learn your algorithms, which will never change. You learn your core software engineering principles, recursion, OOP, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it's fine. I get why they teach it, and stuff like that. But you don't learn your day-to-day job there.
Yeah, they're still shoving. Not that Java's bad, but having programmed in Java for 2 years because of college, I have a burning hatred for it just because the OOP stuff, and I don't even know if it's Java itself, but just the way that they taught it, I don't think they did it right.
My core software class was a huge Java class. The way they did it is we had software 1 and software 2. My freshman year, I did software 1, and basically what that class was we would use these utilities that they implemented, like set, map, queue, list, etc., to implement different projects. Then in software 2, we would go through and learn how to implement those core pieces. So we would learn how to implement set, learn how to implement map, learn how to do all that. And the actual implementations for these were the most OOP things I've ever seen in my entire life. We would write the abstract classes for them. We would then write like 4 different implementations for them following the interface. We would then write a bunch of tests for them. We would do all this stuff. We would create a set off of a binary tree, a set off of a linked list, all this different stuff to teach us these core things. And I think it was an effective way of teaching. I just don't like object-oriented programming all that much. I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm very much an FP guy. Yeah, we can talk about that later if you want to, but
For sure, yeah. I've definitely got a lot of thoughts about that, and we'll talk about Elixir as well. But before we go into that, Goose, do you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to say that Ben made a very good point about the bureaucracy of adapting the courses curriculum to what's going on in the industry. This industry is moving too fast.
yeah.
And you will definitely not learn what will be your job, but you might adopt good foundation skill set for it.
Yeah, getting the foundational skill set to then be able to adapt to the new technology is the important piece. Like the fact that I understand binary trees, that I'm very good at recursion, that I'm very good at building and structuring applications, that skill set does not become less useful when I switch from Next.js to SvelteKit. It doesn't become less useful when I switch my backend from JavaScript to Go or to Elixir or to whatever. These core foundational programming principles are important, and understanding how to think about and do these things is hard. I worked as a grader in college. I've graded kids' projects and homeworks. I've seen exam grades and all this stuff. The the culling that happens in those classes is insane. It's about a 50% pass rate, and I think of the 50% that pass, probably only like 10 to 20% of those actually get it. The amount of people who actually deeply understand computer science is a lot less than you think.
It's really interesting too because I just took data structures last semester, and by no means am I a crazy good like binary tree algorithmic guy. I have a basic understanding of them, and then I feel like I have a little bit of common sense. But I was in study groups with like a couple of my friends, and I was trying to explain it to them, and I'm like, you just nothing against them, but it's just like you aren't getting this like the way I am, and I'm like, yeah, it's just not built for you because
Yeah.
then I would go on to talk about like sharding for a database, and
Yeah, their eyes glaze
they're
over.
like, what?
What?
No, multiple databases with sync. Get it out of here. And I'm like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's something that I think about sometimes, that like, and this is definitely a very spicy take, but I do think that like some people are just built for it and some people aren't, just the way some people think. Like for me personally, the way I am, I'm really bad at like memorization and stuff like that. I'm horrible at just regurgitating facts and memorizing stuff. I'd be a horrible doctor. Like I'm not built for med school. I don't want to memorize all the bones in the body and that shit. That's not for me. But I am really good at figuring out and solving problems based on things I know and just piecing it together. I was really good at BSing my way through school because I could just kind of figure stuff out really well. And that's just kind of a certain skill or gift or whatever you want to call it that you have to be really good at computer science. You have to be able to see a problem, think about how you would tackle it, and then get creative and implement different solutions and then come to an answer. I got away with not doing much homework by doing that, which was very nice.
Yeah, I'm currently in college, so I do not BS or go around any rules, obviously.
No, never.
But
Never.
it's that it's I feel like it's the basic understanding of knowing how computing works in general and how code works in general that I feel like has gotten me further in life. Because if I look at something and I have code in any language and it's not compiling or running, then I'm like, okay, I need to go line by line, or I need to locate where a possible error might be. But if I were to give it to my friend, he would have no idea. Just because I feel like it's a mindset of a developer, and yeah, I think that's what sets you apart. And I was talking to you before the stream about like the vibe coding with the cursor.
Mm-hmm.
I can open up cursor. I can open up my my project or whatever like that in Composer, and I can literally like close my eyes and just be like, all right, I know I need a database, and then I need these connections, and then I need this, and I know all the core stuff, and then I just let cursor and the agent kind of handle all like the extraneous edge cases. And I found that to work really, really well, because do I know the syntax? Yes. Do I know all the syntax? No. Could I figure it out? Sure. But I don't really need to in some cases, because it knows that, and I just have to handle the back-end logic and the business use type thing.
It's about problem solving, I think. It's whether or not you can take a problem, like use as an example, just even something like what I was talking about earlier, pulling data out of Gmail, running it through an AI, and then running that into Notion. Being able to mentally visualize all the different pieces and things that need to happen, being able to hear that and then be like, oh, okay, so we need to start by fetching out of some API within Gmail somehow. Even if you don't know the exact shape of it, you don't know what the API path is, you don't know exactly what the query parameters are, whatever, you know conceptually what you need to do. And then you are able to visualize and understand, okay, now I need to transform the data into this, and then it needs to land there. And then you can just kind of figure out the pieces in between there. That being able to take a big problem like that, break it into the actual pieces it needs, visualize the data flow, and understand that's the core of being good at computer science that some people have and some people don't. It just is what it is.
Yeah. I want to talk a bit about functional programming. We briefly touched on this topic, and you recently released a video on Elixir on your channel. Why don't you tell us a bit about your experience? You expressed some very interesting amount of love for functional programming. Very unusual for web dev, average web dev, that is.
I am fully, at this point, fully functional programming pilled. The gist of it is, back in December, Advent of Code was going on. I went through and did all the Advent of Code stuff in Elixir, which turned out to be a great choice, because the whole point of it for me was just to learn the language. I wasn't trying to compete or do anything like that. And it very much kind of broke my brain in how you think about these things, because there are certain restrictions on there. Like, there are no traditional loops in Elixir the way you would be used to. So there's no for loops, there's no while loops, nothing like that. Well, there is technically kind of a for loop, but certainly no while loops, and not the way you're thinking. Variables are always constants. There is no concept of mutability whatsoever in functional programming or in Elixir. So you very much have to go through and solve these programs differently. And you have to lean really heavily into recursion, which is something that I really enjoy. And that way of thinking, the functional programming way of thinking of just like taking your data and transforming it through functions. There's no objects that have some state within them and you're manipulating the state in that object and then pulling it in and out with getters and setters and all this different stuff. It's just like, okay, I'm pulling out of my database. I grabbed it out of Redis. I then need to take this data, transform it through a function, do some stuff on that, and then can return it out and keep going from there. That way of thinking about programming as transformations of data is to me what functional programming is. It's also to me what the serverless web development world is like and why I think it fits so well in kind of the way I build and do things that I just love it. It's a really, really cool language. I could go on and on about all the different things. The pattern matching is amazing. It doesn't have types, which is unfortunate. I actually found myself not missing those as much as I thought I was. But again, these were like advent of code problems, which are just glorified leak code problems. So in a real world application, I couldn't see myself using it. Like the Elixir Phoenix framework, which is very similar to Ruby on Rails or Laravel, has a strong niche community around it, and a lot of people really like it. But I would find it hard to build something really big with that. It has very strong opinions. There's no strong types in there, and it's not nearly as well supported. This kind of goes back to AI type stuff where I found the core language features of Elixir, the LLMs were great at. That's kind of how I learned it. It was, again, what we were talking about earlier, not just asking it to solve the problem for me, but rather I'm like, okay, in order to solve this problem, I need to transform the data into this. I then need to do this to it, and then finally print out that. And I could just ask it specific pieces like, hey, I need to like pattern match on this function and then do a recursive call. What's the syntax for that? And then have it teach me that piece, which is super useful. Great way to learn these things. But when you're actually trying to like use the frameworks and stuff and the technologies there, these are much smaller, much more niche. Very few examples are out there on how to do this stuff. That makes it to the point where like it's a lot harder to justify using those, unfortunately.
Yeah, the advancements in natural language processing, that is AI, LLMs, they are definitely changing the definition of software engineer job because, well, you don't have to know as much if you're working with technology that is relatively popular in the training data set. And this is going to drive a lot of decision making on the tech stack moving forward, right?
Yeah.
Because we were talking a bit about this. One thing working on a project that uses Next.js and the other when working with SvelteKit, you will not get as useful responses for Svelte than for Next.js because there's just so much open source stuff for Next.js applications that LLMs will easily answer any question.
One of my favorite tests to do on new LLM models these days is what I'm calling the Svelte test. Or basically what I'll do is I'll just ask it like, hey, make me a client-side to-do app in Svelte with the new Rune syntax. Because Svelte released Svelte 5 last October. Huge overhaul to how they do state management, a huge change of the framework. Very ballsy, very bold to do that so deep into the framework and so loved of a framework. But I'm glad they did. I think it makes the framework objectively better and gives it a much brighter future. But there's like no training data on that. There are like Insider Viz is probably one of the, well, I don't know if it's one of the biggest, but like it is one of the only like major Svelte 5 code bases I know of that's out there. Like all the code in Insider Viz is using Svelte 5, the Rune syntax, all that stuff. There's no training data on this. So when you ask it to make a to-do app with runes, which is a super basic problem, it will output the most schizophrenic nonsense every time. It will hallucinate signal variables. It will hallucinate dollar signs all over the place. It will create weird hybrids of React and Svelte. It's god awful and completely unusable to the point where it makes it harder to justify using these things on teams that aren't super deep into this. For a team like what I'm working on or what I'm going to be working in for the next few years, where it's just me and a couple other guys, it's fine to use whatever tech we're super deep on and super passionate about because I can get around it. I can still write Svelte without having to do all that stuff. But wider industry adopting that at like a generic app agency where you have people cycling in and out, it's really hard to justify not putting React in there, especially with the React compiler, because there's going to be more, the LLMs are going to be better and more useful, and you're going to get more code out of them versus having to hand write and hand roll and fight this stuff much more in these more niche technologies. Elixir, Phoenix, and the surrounding ecosystem has the same exact problem. I don't know what the solution to this is. It's kind of a bummer. I don't love the idea of the dev world effectively freezing on the current technologies, that like it's just like, okay, React is where it's going to be. It's just good enough, which, oh God, Theo has made me a React apologist, which I'm not happy about. But I've learned to begrudgingly accept that React is very good, and I understand why people like it. There are so many things in there that I miss in Svelte. I miss the composability of it. I miss the multiple functions in one file. It's a good framework and a good tool. I get it. But
Yeah.
the the reality is that could be the future. It could just be like we just keep making React and Python and TypeScript better and better, and it's hard for a new player to break into the space.
That's right. Say whatever you want about React. It's here to stay. At this
Yeah,
point, you
it's
can't
not
change
going
that.
well.
Same goes for JavaScript, probably.
Oh, TypeScript is not going anywhere. I mean,
TypeScript.
and there's just so much money going into it at this point. Like, it is a deeply flawed, deeply goofy ecosystem in so many ways. There's so many things that are so silly in there. But like, that's what's there. That's what everyone's building with. That's what the cloud providers are investing into. If you want to work on AWS and get really deep into AWS, building with all their different services using SQS and Lambda and S3 and all these things together, the first class way to do that is within JavaScript, or really in TypeScript. Because again, you can do these on raw API calls in another language, but you're just gimping yourself. You're making it harder to run things on a Lambda. For shits and giggles, we wanted to put our search implementation on Insider Viz for like the top bar searching between companies. We wanted to write a custom search for that for reasons I don't know. I think it was cheaper. And we ended up writing a custom C++ Lambda, implementing Levenshine's distance and all this stuff in C++, and hosted that on a Lambda. And that was a deeply painful and silly process that is not practical for anything day to day. It would have been way easier to just write it in JavaScript or TypeScript, gzip that up, put it in the Lambda box, and then it's good.
How many beers were you in when you implemented that? That sounds so painful.
It was 4 a.m. and we thought it was funny. I
Fair
mean,
enough.
that's kind of the answer. We did a lot of things in there just because we thought it was funny. I'm going to be honest. I've done that more times than I would like to admit, but we learn from it, so I'm not mad about it.
That's what side projects are for. They're for exploring stuff.
Yeah.
Let this be your motivation to open source the Insider Viz, right? Bring some training data for Svelte 5.
Yeah, real. Genuinely, that's something I've thought about, where like I want a big real world Svelte 5 code base as an example. And I am very actively trying to figure out ways to make the Svelte ecosystem feel good, especially since I've been working so closely with Theo. I really get to see the React ecosystem in its purest form and at its best, because he and Mark and everyone working with them are incredibly deep at the frontier, know this stuff super well, and are implementing really good React projects. So taking the things that I really like from what they're doing. A good example of this is the authentication solution. I'm really tired of thinking about and talking about auth. It's not a fun problem. It's boring. I get it. Auth is easy, whatever, skill issues, meh. But like the way they do it with either Clerk or now with OpenAuth is they'll just have like an auth service that exists out there that you log into, you set it up once, you kind of forget about it. And then whenever you log in, you can grab your user ID. And then instead of having a users table, they will just put like a user ID field within their database and then run it off of that. And it's a really great way of thinking about this. This whole killing the users table thing, I am a huge fan of. And I want to bring this over to the Svelte world. But in the Svelte world, Clerk kind of sucks, and I will not probably be using that over there. So I need to figure out a good solution there. And the one that I'm working on right now that I spent way too much time on yesterday, that was a painful process, was getting OpenAuth set up on Cloudflare. I could rant about for a while. That is the best worst product I've ever used. It's so bad and so good at the same time. I don't know how it's even possible, but it is what it is. But the whole point of this is I want to set up a nice authentication system that I can set up and then forget about it. And it's a really nice generic solution that just kind of works. Not using anything that doesn't already exist, but just putting this together, making a nice example out of this, putting that out there, making a little video on it, and then slowly moving the Svelte ecosystem forward to have answers to these things and make it better.
Right, and I think this, because I've kind of done this already, and I'm gonna have to look into OpenAuth because I didn't know that existed. But just looking at it now, it looks really good.
It's really good.
Because if you build something that basically you have the same auth for every project, for every little side project, because I've encountered multiple times where I'm trying to set up a project and maybe launch it for free on my website or something like that. And I'm like, I want to add auth to this, but then I got to go through the workflows and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just like, fuck this.
I
Yeah.
found it easier because I currently use what is it, NextAuth? NextAuth.
Oh, bleh.
I know. I'm working. That's why I'm excited in OpenAuth, because I'm trying to migrate away from it because it's painful.
It
but
blows.
but what I found out with OpenAuth, after I got everything tweaked to how I like it, I created a custom like cursor rules file that basically I can say implement auth in this project, and it handles all the edge cases in that cursor rules, and it just implements. And
Yeah, that's.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that's actually a really cool way of doing it. That works well. I think the big thing for me with auth is the biggest thing I really like about the way they're doing it is they effectively separate auth from their service, and they just make it a separate concern. That's what OpenAuth effectively does. It creates this authentication server or whatever on Cloudflare that just lives on Cloudflare. You basically set it up once and you forget about it. You can just now use that for authentication on whatever you want to end up using. And I basically created like, it was just like the Davis auth server or something, where now I just have this box floating out there and I can quickly just use that for authentication on any project instead of having to go through and deeply integrate, Supabase auth or Lucia auth or whatever different provider I want to use. I can just use this nice separated solution that makes it easier. I like separating those out. My data is over here, my auth is over here, and I like it that way.
Right. And yeah, and from what it looks like, it for the user, it just when a user signs in, that information is available in the session, and then that can just be used to query the database, and that database only has to have a user ID for the individual data values. And getting rid of the user table that's amazing. That's the best thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's a weird thing when you first say it, but as soon as I've actually like Picting was the first project I worked on that had that fully implemented, and I instantly fell in love with it. It's such a good way to think about it. And there are certain problems right now that I just do not want to have to give a singular shit about. Authentication is one of them. I don't want to think about it. I don't care. I get it. It's easy, whatever. You're very smart. But like, I just want to be done with auth. I just want to have a good solution, be done. Same thing with hosting. I do not want to spend my time thinking about hosting right now. I'm very happy just putting it on the Vercel box and letting it work. Or if I have some normal, more dedicated server type thing, sticking that in Railway. Or if I need to do some weird thing like OpenAuth, I can spin up a Cloudflare worker and do it on there, even if I have many qualms with Cloudflare as it is. I spent 2 hours yesterday trying to set up a SvelteKit deployment on Cloudflare. The docs were completely useless. Nothing made any sense. The AI was hallucinating weird stuff, and it was all in this weird esoteric workers or Wrangler.toml thing I had to set up, and I just gave up and set it up on Vercel in 2 minutes. I'm like, yep, I'm not bothering with this. We're done. I'm just keeping it here. I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys should both try Better Off if you haven't already. I think it also has some sort of integration for Svelte they're working on.
It does. I've seen a couple videos on that I have saved in my watch later. I do need to take a look at the Better Off stuff, but again, it's one of those things where like, if it's integrating stuff directly into my code base, I don't want to do that. I want it separated and I want to not think about it. That's the biggest thing for me, is I want to think about it as little as humanly possible.
I see. Then OpenAuth probably makes more sense.
Probably, yeah.
All right. What do you think, fellas? Good time to wrap it up?
I don't have any super compelling rants left off the top of my head. That's kind of what I'm thinking about right now.
I'll throw one more out there that I've been thinking about recently. So, because it kind of applies to me, but I want to get y'all's opinion on it. So, obviously nowadays there's been a shift in kind of sort of code understanding, going from like the syntax of a language like really, really good, and that's now shifting to like the logic of that language like really, really good. Yeah. Now, obviously with that, it's getting harder and harder for companies to kind of screen new employees and stuff like that with like leak code and stuff like that. If I sat down and you gave me like leak code, I am highly confident I would do horrible in it. But if you sat me down and said, implement this multi-stage app with its infrastructure and stuff like that, I feel very confident in doing that. So what do you think is not a solution, but like what do you think is a better way to kind of do those screenings for like these larger companies who've got to take in tons and tons of candidates? But do you think leak code's still a good solution, and that like programmers and software engineers should still have a good understanding of like the syntax for those languages? Or what do you think?
I think to me, the reason why a lot of those companies like the leak code type stuff is, at least, and I've never been in the position of the interviewer or whatever, and I haven't actually had to go through an interview like that. But my guess is the whole point of it is to like sit down with them and see how they think about a problem, how they talk through the problem. If you give them, how do I reverse this linked list? They just want to see you think out loud and be like, oh, okay, so I would do this, this, and this in order to handle that problem and get a solution out. It is, I know that the hiring situation right now is a nightmare. I'm very happy that I don't have to go through that. It is absolutely, if it's possible, the best way to do hiring and get hired and do all that stuff is to just have friends and to just have a foot in the door. That makes such a difference. It's so much easier when you have that. Getting in cold is tough. But also, like, two of my best friends, the guys I built Insider Viz with, both very easily landed very good jobs at startups almost instantly when they started applying in December. One of them, Ryder, who you guys will meet at some point soon here, he moved out to SF pretty recently, working at a company, and his interview process was he basically went through a phone screening. Before he even got to the phone screening, he sent them Insider Viz and was like, hey, here's what I built and what I've worked on for this and some of the things I did. That helps a ton if you have like real world projects like that. That's very rare. Almost no one does somehow. So having something like that really helps you. And then once you get in the phone screening, it was just clear that like, yeah, okay, you kind of get what's going on in like whatever phone screen interview question they give you. Then they just brought him out for like a week-long trial run to basically just write code for them. And they just threw a really hard problem at him that they'd been struggling with. They're like, figure this out, have fun. And then he came up with a really cool solution for it in a week. And then they're like, great, here's your money, come work for us. And then he moved out right after. So I think if you're really, really good, it's totally doable to get these jobs. I think the hard answer here is just from the interviewee perspective, you just have to really know your stuff, build actual stuff, and then it's pretty doable. But for the interviewer side, to filter out, if you get 10,000 applications and 9,000 of those can't actually code, and then of that 1,000, there's only like 10 you actually want to work with, I don't envy them. I don't know how you do that because automated screening questions will just be one-shotted by AI. I don't know. I do not have a good answer to that.
I will say that I've been tortured by this process of hiring people. I have interviewed hundreds of people throughout 2024. It is absolutely horrendous, and there's so much AI slop in there. On resumes, on people cheating with AI on their side screen. Horrible. Yep. I do believe that lead code type problems are still very relevant if we're keeping synchronous interviewing process in place, because it's not about your understanding even of data structures and algorithms per se. Yeah. It's about your ability to think critically, right? Reason analytically, handle ambiguity, right? Because sometimes you would give a problem that intentionally doesn't clarify one point, and you want to hear a candidate ask questions about it as he's figuring out a solution. In general, breaking down the thought process really does help you understand whether or not someone has what it takes to be a competent developer.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, and at the end of the day, that is just kind of like, I think what hiring often is just like risk reduction. It's just like how much in my head can I reduce the risk of this being a bad hire? That's the whole game. And I don't know. I'm probably going to have to do that at some point. And I'm not looking forward to it. But yeah, I think the best way to do that for sure is just like if you have friends who you trust and they know this person or it's a friend of yours, it's a really easy grab and hire. I mean, that's how I got in the door with Theo. Like he just already knew who I was and already like had seen my stuff, and I'd already kind of proven myself before I even got in the door. And then once I was in there, I just kind of kept proving myself, working the way up, and then you get into it. But I don't have a good answer for it other than just like if you're trying to get a job, just be really good. Just be really,
it's a
really
skill
good.
issue, bro. Just like don't be bad.
Just be good, dude. Just be good. What's the problem?
Know, that sounds awful, but also like in my firsthand experience, having gone through it myself and seen what two of my best friends have gone through, they were just really, really good, and they did really well, and it wasn't too bad. So
I personally think that one of the best ways to kind of gauge a new hire is a tool I made a while back called Risky Fridays. And you put in anybody's GitHub username, and it analyzes their commit history for the past like year or so, and the amount of times that they've pushed to like a main branch on Friday or after hours on like a weekend,
yeah,
gets your risk score. So these people up here with the 100%, I wouldn't trust them. But
they're shipping on Friday.
yeah, I know. I'm a heavy Thursday and Wednesday shipper apparently.
Yeah, that tracks. I don't know. Hard problem.
Yeah, but all right, man. I don't think I have anything else. Goose, you got anything else?
No, we're good to wrap up.
It was great having you here today, Ben. A lot of great conversations. Would love to have you on in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
After your more fun endeavors with Theo, because I'm sure he'll keep you busy. I know we'll probably have him launch a Vercel copy soon, because he'll find some qualm with Vercel that he'll have to recreate the entire platform on. But
I don't think we'll go that far, but yeah.
But yeah, it was great having you on today, and we'll catch you in the next one, guys.
Oh yeah.
Peace out.
Cheers.